Yes, so Leah and I were here last year, and we've also been here since then. For those of you who were here last year and were able to hear Leah give her sort of performed paper in situ under the trees down at Bundanon, it was a great experience. And I know she's had the opportunity to expand her thoughts and sort of build another level of thinking around that, which we're going to hear some of today, and I've also had the privilege of reading it in advance. Leah is a human geographer, one of my new favourite terms, and I wish I was a human geographer now, which simply is the study of people and place, but it sounds much more poetic than that. And I know it is. She lectures in human geography at the School of Earth and Environmental Sciences at the University of Wollongong, and I think I'll just hand it over to her.
So I guess I've been asked today to talk a little bit about this work that I've been continuing to develop. And what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about the paper and read a few short sections from the written piece that I've prepared. I'm hoping that it's written for a scholarly audience, but I hope that it's written in a way that's accessible enough that it'll resonate in some way with the audience that's here today. And in general, broadly, the paper kind of traces the form and the method and the development of the collaboration that we were part of here last year and that we continue to develop now. And it addresses a series of questions. First of all, what does this kind of art-science collaboration that's called Siteworks reveal about this place? Secondly, what does it reveal about the possibilities of art-science collaboration more broadly? And so, in other words, what does art-science collaboration really enable? Why do we do such a thing? And in the paper, I make three arguments, or I make three observations, I suppose. And I'd just like to briefly go through each of those three arguments and, as I say, read a few short excerpts from my work. So, first of all, the first argument that I make in the paper is that Siteworks informs a kind of politics of belonging. And I'd like to just read a little bit about what I mean by that. So the question of belonging is deeply politicised in Australia. It presents, it's present in debates around oversimplified binaries or dualisms of Indigenous and non-Indigenous and Australian and migrant. And it extends to our attitudes to the non-human world in terms of our classifications of native and feral in the animal world, or native and weed, or native and invasive in the plant world. The notion of belonging is clearly significant in many places and contexts around the world, but in Australia it's acutely political. And in the contemporary context of change, I think categories of belonging must be reassessed. So this idea of belonging became a real focus of mine, and one aspect of this belonging that I became really interested in is the idea of a passing through place. And I was really pleased to hear a little bit more about Sue Feary's work, because I think that what I've written ties into some of those ideas quite well. So I'd just like to read a section from the paper about this idea of a passing through place. So a key characteristic of contemporary Bundanon is that this is a place that people pass through. Visitors to the historic house and property, artists in residence, education groups, employees all pass through this place. We learn, make connections, but we do not dwell here. Arthur Boyd and his family, the people for whom this place is best known perhaps, lived here for only a short time and claimed no ownership. Previous settler families similarly passed through. Now, visitors to Bundanon, as Deb mentioned, frequently ask questions about the Indigenous and contact history of the site. Likewise, Siteworks participants were really eager to learn more about this history. There are strong living connections, of course, and oral histories associated with this place. We know that this place, like all of Australia, was taken through the process of colonisation. But under what conditions? In order to form relationships with place, visitors want to know something of this history. Now, in 2010, as we've just learnt, Bundanon Trust commissioned an Indigenous heritage management strategy, and the purpose of this strategy was to develop and share knowledge of this site. The heritage study identifies artefacts, including stone tools and axe grinding grooves, but proposes that the wetlands and swamps of the Shoalhaven Delta downstream are likely to have been the pre-contact centre of population. It's likely that this area was a place to pass through. The river being the transport for corridor and food, the transport corridor for food, resources, ceremony and ritual, rather than a place necessarily to settle in. Now, the implications of this finding invite us, once again, I think, to rethink the notion of belonging. What does it mean to belong to a place? Historic and contemporary relations with Bundanon suggest that passing through place can hold deep significance, that the idea of belonging does not necessitate settlement or permanence. Returning to the arts and science, Siteworks itself forms a fleeting set of relations with place, but relations that can be revealing. Transitory encounters were created with Bundanon in a variety of forms. Several participants responded directly to the river, which is the most striking element passing through this landscape. Artists and scientists linked the river with both specific aspects of this place and with broader, perhaps universal ideas such as change over time. So, for instance, Tester Quincy's float slipping through time involved a performance in the tradition of body weather on a raft that magically floated upstream and spoke to the connection between humans and water through time. Hydron Law's light signs reflected on the reflective properties of the river and its long memory, juxtaposing the river's movements with projected images of stone, moon and fire. Robin Backen took words from the 1931 diary of then Riversdale resident Jack Weir in Last Word, a sound piece using the echo of the valley to express something of the living history of this site. Ivars Reinfeld studies the passage of fish through the river and the effects of changes in environmental flow regimes related to extraction of water from Tallowa Dam to augment Sydney's water supply. And the floodplain is the focus of Tim Cohen and Stephanie Commode's research on the climate record and sea level history. All of these works draw attention to the mutability of the river, ecologies, human lives, and connection with this country. They trigger thinking about the concept of belonging in contemporary Australian society, a society comprised of humans and others, and how we might behave responsibly and ethically as members of this society. Importantly, the theme of passing through prompts us to rethink any preconceived connection between belonging and permanence, or belonging and a kind of longevity in place. An assumed link between the latter underlies much of the debate around native and introduced plant or animal species in Australia. Examining this presumed connection has implications for thinking and action towards plants and animals, and for the highly contested political ideas of migration and identity in human society. So that's my first argument in the paper, that this place challenges our ideas of belonging because it puts forward the idea that passing through a place can be a really important form of belonging, that in reflection on Sue's presentation just now, belonging doesn't necessarily mean permanent dwelling in a place. Passing through a place can be equally important.